Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Keep Calm and Job Search On, Strategies for Staying Motivated and Confident in the Job Search Process, presented by Counseling and Psychological Services and the Center for Career Services. Today's webinar will be recorded and archived on our YouTube channel at MSU Career Workshops. Once you leave today's webinar, you will receive a survey on this presentation. Please provide your feedback as this will help us improve our services. You will have the opportunity to submit questions by typing them into the questions pane of the control panel. You can send in your questions at any time during the presentation. We will collect these and address them as time permits. So my name is Adam Mayer, and I'm the Director of Career Development in the Center for Career Services at Montclair State University. This webinar is co-sponsored by the Office of Annual Giving and Alumni Engagement, which provides benefits and services and hosts events and activities throughout the year. For more information, visit montclair.edu/alumni or contact the office at 973-655-4141 or via email at alumni@montclair.edu.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Jude Oy. I'm a clinical psychologist. You can find me over at Counseling and Psychological Services. We're located at Russ Hall, open Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. And I'm also the Suicide Prevention Coordinator for the university. I'm joined here by one of my colleagues, Dr. Sudha Wadhwani.
Hello there, everyone. I'm Dr. Sudha Wadhwani. I am the Coordinator of Outreach and Prevention here at CAPS, and I'm looking forward to talking with you more about your job search process.
So we have a very ambitious agenda. What we'll try and do is give you information about the job search, methods of researching and choosing a career, a job, or field, how to stay motivated and focused during the job search, how to sell yourself and highlight your strengths, how to network and get over the fear of approaching someone, how to follow up with employers, and interviewing, and how to remain confident despite rejections, as well as how to cope with the stress and pressure. So now that we've kind of introduced ourselves, we'd like to get to know you guys a little bit better. And I'd like to, at this point, launch our first poll. So if you would, please identify your current status. Select one answer that best fits your situation. This is where you guys on the other side participate. Okay, you can see the results have come in. So 14% are current undergraduate students. We don't have any graduate students. 29% are recent graduates and unemployed, but the overwhelming majority of our audience out there, 57%, are employed, but looking for another job.
Okay, great.
Thank you for that.
Thanks for giving us that information. So Adam, you're going to talk about some job search stats now?
Absolutely. So according to employment statistics, there are 140,400,040 jobs in the US. And, that certainly looks like a healthy number, but what we need to do is look at the actual job descriptions themselves, because this number doesn't look at education qualifications, certifications, that kind of thing. But we do have a good report. The employment situation as of June 2018, total payroll employment increased by 213,000 jobs in June, as reported by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. Job growth occurred in professional and business services, manufacturing, healthcare, and it looks like retail trade jobs have gone down. I can see that from the effects of Amazon and what they call the retail apocalypse. It's quite a powerful force. Let's see next. The average 27-year-old has had 6 to 7 jobs since they were 18, many for less than 1 year. Sometimes those are seasonal jobs. They could be camp jobs, part-time work. That seems fairly common. The average 45 to 53-year-old has 11 to 12 jobs since the age of 18, which kind of reminds me of a topic in years past that used to be frowned upon. Some folks would call that job hopping, where people didn't stay with an employer very long, but with the advent of millennials in the job market, it's become very common, and that negative connotation has sort of gone away in some employers' minds. I can see myself looking at LinkedIn profiles, and folks are staying at jobs for, a year and 4 months, a year and 8 months, whereas in the past it would be 2 years to say 4 years. So the employment market is changing. Yep. So how do we get some information under our belt? We definitely want to go online. We know this is an important place. There's the Bureau of Labor Statistics that I quoted from before, but one that's a little bit more friendly on the eyes and to digest information is what's called the Occupational Outlook Handbook. Those of us who are aware of it know it's a great resource. You can see the site is there, bls.gov/OOH. The cool thing about this site is you can look up jobs and look at the employment projections up to, I think, about 2026. So this gives us an idea of, how well this position is actually going to be in need. What's nice too is if you're currently in a job, you can look up that job title and then look at similar occupations. It's a link. Click on that and it'll give you sort of families of jobs that are similar, so that maybe you don't have to retool as much to get back out into a different position in the workforce. Okay.
Great.
So I think at this time we'll be launching into our second poll question.
So if you would, please identify the most important factor in helping you choose your major career. I can see that you're all voting here. Okay, looks like everybody. So let's see, 0% said society or culture, which is interesting because I know culture oftentimes, right, has a pretty big effect on what people pursue. 29% said parents and their family. 0% said school or professors. We won't tell anybody here at MSU. That's okay. But overwhelmingly, 71% said their self and their own interests. Makes sense.
Okay, excellent. It's so good to have that information as we move on further. So I just want to recognize that you're all at different places and have different factors involved. It's good to know some of those. And some of you may have already, as undergrads, chosen a field of study or major. Others might be more unclear about career options ahead of you. So it's important to kind of take a moment and think about where you are. Hopefully answering the poll helped you with that. And really think about what your goals are in your career search. It seems like yourself and your interests are very important to you, and sometimes it's hard to juggle that with demands from others like parents and family and other factors. And it sounds like a lot of you, more than half of you, are already in a job, but something might not be quite right for you since you are looking for another job. And I really believe that first of all, if it's your first job, it could be a stepping stone for you. I often tell people that their first job, don't feel it's your be-all, end-all job. And I have to say for myself, I had several jobs before knowing what I really wanted to do. It was very much a kind of default process that eventually got me where I am by feeling like many jobs weren't what I wanted to do. So don't feel discouraged if you're in that situation. I really believe every job we have informs the next. We learn from it, we can take from it, we learn about ourselves, and we can take from each job transferable skills for the next job. Now, those of you that are undergraduate students, you're a step ahead. That's great. You also could be working and going to school like many people do here at Montclair State. And it sounds like some of you have recently graduated and might be right in that job search process, which is very stressful, but job search on, that's why we're here. So a few tips for you. First of all, talk to people, network. Don't be shy. Really reach out to people in different fields that you might be considering, in different professions. Learn about their experiences. Learn about their stories, their journeys. You can really get some information from within different fields, different types of job settings that can help you in figuring out your path. Also connecting with counselors, whether a career counselor, whether a psychologist. You know, there's all this stigma. You know, we're psychologists, and sometimes people think, oh, you really need this major mental illness to seek therapy. I really believe it's a place that you can go to for consultation and support around many transition points and decisions in your life. So please know that there are resources available. And I also really want to talk a bit about the concept of being real with yourself. Some of you who stated that you are already in a job may be in the process of doing this right now in your current job. Is this a good fit? Are you doing it? Are you in it for the right reasons? And sometimes really thinking about that is important in figuring out, okay, am I happy? Is this the right fit for me? Is this congruent with who I am? You know, why did I do this? Sometimes this even happens way after, years later. You're like, what am I doing in this job? And that's okay. You know, that is a turning point. Thinking about your path. What do you really want? Is it congruent with who you are? I know you did not choose, none of you chose society or culture, but several of you chose parents, family, self, and interests. And I actually believe all of those things are influenced by society and culture. So, for example, some people may have grown up believing that a career is something practical, and what's important is security, job security, being able to pay the bills, and that's what is most important. Passion might not have anything to do with it, where other people might believe you need that passion and you got to love what you do. So I'll say, you know, my perspective is kind of both and, I would say. I really believe that, yes, you have to pay the bills. And there's a reality, a life reality here that we're dealing with. But I have a strong belief that you have to love what you do. I really believe it. And you have to, you know, passion might be a strong word. You know, you might not be fully passionate and in love with what you do, but there's got to be something that's really, you know, fitting with your belief system. And you spend a lot of time at work, right? We spend more time, depending on when you go to bed, more time at work than you do at home. And so if you don't feel positively and fulfilled, at least to some level, by what you do, it can be a real downer. It can be really depressing, and then you bring it home, and then it spreads to other areas. Also, if you have a job or a field that isn't congruent with who you are, I mean, those are the people you're spending 40 plus hours with a week. So your whole circle, the people you have lunch with, the people you meet, the people, you know, you may go out with, those are the people you meet at work. And so if it's incongruent with who you are, you're also not meeting people that may be stimulating or interesting to you. So it has this trickle effect and can impact many other areas of your life.
So one important tool that could be really helpful in helping you decide and choose a career field or job is the Holland test. Just simply type that in, Holland test, into a Google search, and you'll come across a number of online tests that you can take. And basically what it is John Holland is a psychologist who developed the theory regarding personality and job fit. And according to his theory, there are these number of personality types that we have that fit best with a particular line of work or a particular field. And understanding what kind of personality you have can help you identify maybe what area or what line of work you could go into. So check that out, see if that's something that could be helpful in helping you identify and kind of really zone in on a line of work that would be a good fit given your personality. So, and thinking a little bit about being clear about your goals, it's going to be helpful for you to think about what kind of position you're looking for, right? Think about aspects of the job. Are you looking for a 9-to-5 gig? Are you looking for more independent work? Are you wanting to be just more creative and use your expressive abilities to kind of find you work? Well, one suggestion, if you're having difficulty in finding that, is to consider volunteering. And Adam, can you talk a little bit about jerseycares.org?
Sure, absolutely. So jerseycares.org is a free website, and the nice piece about it is you can go in and put your zip code, and it will bring up from its database areas that are local to that, and you can even dictate mileage, how far you're willing to travel, of people who need help, organizations that need volunteers. So it could be something like tutoring or working at an animal shelter. It's a great way to get out there, because I think there can be a real problem with sticking on the internet too long. And we know the internet job search in particular, I've seen, I think 12 to 15% successful. So if we get out of there, get off the internet and get out of the house and volunteer, we become people again. So you're literally rubbing elbows, you're next to people. Whereas with the internet job search, your resume, whether it's a .doc or a PDF sitting inside Indeed or Monster, one of these job databases, it's tough to get seen, it's tough to get found. So if you can work it into your schedule, check out jerseycares.org and get out there. It's a great way to meet people, and here too, it's a resume builder. You can add that as a category to your resume. Sure.
And we really think volunteering is a great way to just get your foot in the door, and also to get some good firsthand experience and to kind of test the waters a little bit, right? One thing that we recommend is you won't really know whether or not it's a good fit for you until you test it out. So dip your toes in, see whether or not that's a good, comfortable place for you, and that can help you decide if that would be a good fit for you, given your personality and what your interests are.
Absolutely. So for those of you who currently are undergraduates or are recent graduates, volunteering or finding a part-time job to get your foot in somewhere and to learn about something, particular field, particular job, even if it's somewhat related, can really, really be helpful in figuring out if it's for you, but also getting your foot in the door somewhere. Most of the jobs I've gotten are through contacts that I've made. I've rarely gotten a job just cold turkey. I've known people, I've worked places, and I have worked with several clients over the years who they've gotten their jobs through an internship perhaps that they had. So really think about ways to get involved while you're an undergrad or out of school, so that you have that network that's building and established. Now, for those of you that are already in a job, I think particularly if you're not feeling happy at that job, it would be great, even if for a couple hours a week you test something else out. It's natural to feel reluctant to go full head on into another field from a job that you currently have, particularly if you have some level of financial security. I can imagine just, okay, let me quit and go in another direction, and also that could be difficult because you may not have experience on your resume to get a job in another direction. So a way to start is by volunteering or doing part-time work. I also want to point out, this is so important, this is not a linear process. This is not fluid. It's really, it goes here, there, and everywhere all around. And when I look back at my resume, now I've been working for, oh my God, several decades. Now when I look back at my resume, it tells a story. It tells a journey about my life. And actually, I'm proud to say an interesting one. And in there are some jobs that, weren't the best fit for me, but they informed then my next job. And I'm a big believer that you really learn and grow in every experience, whether it's positive or negative. So I really believe that even if a place wasn't for me, a job wasn't for me, or an employer or supervisor wasn't for me, that there was something that I got from that job. I really believe that, even the most miserable ones. And so the way you think about it, I think, is key to many things in life, actually, which we'll get into further. So it's evolving, your journey is evolving, and you have to just kind of recognize that in your process and try not to also make comparisons to others. Let's say, you have some friends, they're at this job, they found this perfect job, which they love, and they're set. That's not the path for everyone. Actually, that's probably rare. And don't assume that they won't be set later, because I see clients sometimes in their 40s and 50s, or even in my graduate program in clinical psych, there were people in their 40s and 50s that were going back to school for a whole new career after decades. So we all have our own path, and I want you to really be careful of those comparisons that sometimes we make.
It's hard to stay motivated and focused if we're constantly comparing ourselves to someone who's doing much better than us. But here are some suggestions about how to stay a little bit more motivated and focused during the job search. The first major tip is to leverage technology to work for you. Adam mentioned earlier using things like Indeed and Monster. He'll be talking a little bit more in a few slides about LinkedIn. But we really want you to know that it's natural to feel discouraged or frustrated along this process, and it can be very difficult and challenging. What's really important, though, is that you kind of pat yourself on the back for the efforts that you give yourself and for the efforts that you place in this process, and also understand too that don't judge a day by the harvest you reap, but rather by the seeds that you sow. So, Adam, can you talk a little bit about LinkedIn?
Absolutely, sure. So what we're looking at here is what they call your public profile address. So whether somebody's on LinkedIn, meaning they have an account or not, if you share your public profile address with them, they'll be able to see it. They don't need to log in or anything. But what you need to do first is customize it, just like branding. Like your email account is professional, maybe it's your name, first name, last name, something like that. We want to brand our LinkedIn profile as well. So the way you do this, you click on the icon, you can see the numbered information. You click on the icon that has your picture, and definitely have a picture, by the way. You're more likely to come up in search results for recruiters if you have a photo. Just saying, it's straight up headshot, serious profile, smile.
Make sure it's a good picture.
Yeah, we don't want red eye reduction. We're not into that. It's got to be a nice.
Don't be rolling your eyes in the picture or anything.
Totally. What else? So then view profile and so on. Once you click on edit public profile, what you're going to see is the manufactured address from LinkedIn, and it's horrible. It's long, it's full of numbers, it's full of letters, it's not branded to your name. So once you do get in there, what you want to do is brand it. So, first initial, last name, full, if you have a unique name, you'll probably be in pretty good shape. And just like any other convention, it'll tell you what's taken or what maybe you can have in terms of your address. So once you do that, once you've edited your public profile address, you typically want to place this address in 4 different places. The first would be the header of your resume. So you got your name information, say your phone number, your email address, copy and paste your LinkedIn profile address right next to your email. It's the way to play it. If you're using a cover letter, same thing. I might even copy and paste the header from my resume to my cover letter, so it looks like it's my own letterhead, so to speak. I know not everybody's using a cover letter, but sometimes it can be helpful. The third place, you want to put it in your email signature. So anytime you communicate with somebody, number 1, they know you're on LinkedIn. Number 2, they'll see your name. And then number 3, you're open to connecting. And that's the whole nature of LinkedIn. That's the whole nature of networking. So that's the third. And then the fourth, if you're really ambitious and, a lot of entrepreneurs out there and a lot of job seekers, what you can do is create a networking business card. Now, I think we've probably all seen the commercial for Vistaprint, VISTA print.com.
It is amazing.
Right, say again?
It's amazing. I have my business cards from there.
Yeah, they're awesome. They have the template. You could plug it in, and I've seen you can get like 500 of them for fairly cheap. So you maybe even take the header from your resume. The LinkedIn profile address is already there, and copy and paste that into the template. So that's one tip. We'll take a look at the next one. So when we're on LinkedIn, you definitely want to take advantage of the official university page. This is a free service. I'm not using the paid version of LinkedIn. This is where you can go in to your former institution, your current institution, any school that you've attended, and you can see what the alumni are doing for a living. So you can see on the right-hand side what they do. This is a screenshot from MSU's official page. We're known, in a lot of circles as an education institution. This is not foreign to us, but we've got business development, operations, sales, administrative. And what's nice about it, when you're on the site live, you can click on those bars and think to yourself, okay, look, I'm a psych major, I'm about to graduate, or look, I graduated with a psych degree years ago. I want to see what folks are doing in community and social services. So you'd click on that bar and then it'll list that, 5,185 people who are in that field. A nice way to sort of leverage that is to send a connection request. And whenever you send a connection request to somebody, add a personal note. Don't do the canned sort of, hey, I'm on LinkedIn, I want to join you. That's just robotic. So you want to add a personal note, use the person's name. I might recommend saying something like, I'm interested in learning more about your field. I'm an MSU alumnus. Do you have any recommendations? That kind of thing. We're not asking for jobs because that's a pretty unsophisticated technique. You want to start a relationship, right? So you can keep up to date with those folks once you do connect. You can send them articles that relate to the field. Hey, I just found this. This might be of interest to you, those kinds of things. And then eventually you can ask, if you're comfortable, you can send an attachment through LinkedIn as your resume and say, if you're comfortable, would you mind providing feedback on my resume? If not, I completely understand. The thing is, some people will help us. We have to give them the opportunity to do so. So again, use this official university page on LinkedIn, and you can look up by major, you can look up by industry, you can look up by employer and see where they work, and then focus your job search based on that. So yeah, there's a couple tips with regard to LinkedIn.
Excellent. Thank you.
Sure. A couple additional resources. Hire a Red Hawk, the first item there. This is your career management system, whether you're a current student or an alum. So this is where you can upload your resume. You can search for full-time jobs, part-time jobs, RSVP for events, so career fairs, workshops, all of those types of things will be available to you. So it's, again, your own career management system, and it's called Hire a Red Hawk. So those of us who've graduated, this is Montclair Connect, the second item. This is the online community. I think there's 110,000 plus MSU alumni out there. And what Alumni Relations does is offers this site to you. It gives you information on certainly things like this, like with webinars, events. I know they have, they're going to Monmouth Park Racetrack, I think, sometime next month. There's lots of things. And it's not just in Jersey. They do have chapters elsewhere. So point being, join Montclair Connect once you graduate. This way you can stay literally connected to the university. The third item, this is really cool, buzzfile.com. This is where you can go in and look up your major, and it will list by state employers that hire those kinds of majors. So I can go in there and I can click on sociology, I can click on marketing, biology, and then click New Jersey or click New York or click California. And it'll quantify and give you links to employers, again, who hire those types of major. The BuzzFile, in a phrase, it makes the internet smaller, much more manageable, and allows you to focus your job search. The last one there, this is your best friend. It's called JobScan. That's not a typo. There's no M. So it's jobscan.co. This is a free website that prepares your resumes for what's called applicant tracking systems. This is software that employers purchase. It literally does the work of 4 people in some cases. So you can see why an employer gets hundreds of resumes that they don't have time to go through it. These tracking systems look for certain keywords in the resume, parse them out, and then eventually, if it makes through that filter, it gets to a human reader. So how can you sort of get past those tracking systems? this website, jobscan.co. What you end up doing is copy and pasting your resume on the left-hand side inside the website, and on the right, you're going to copy and paste the job description and then hit scan, and it'll run a report. It'll give you a percentage match between the resume and the job description. And incidentally, you want to get somewhere around 80%. That's the number you really kind of want to aim for in terms of match. And then the back end of the report, it'll list hard skills and soft skills. So you can see what might be missing. And if you legitimately have those skills, then obviously we want to go back in and edit the resume prior to applying. So it's a nice temperature check. So at this point, we're going to launch our third poll. So what percentage of employers use applicant tracking systems? Somebody got it right. Let's see here. Okay. So let's see. 33% of you chose one, the first answer. That's 80%, 87% of all employers. 33, oh, that's a tie. 33% chose the second answer. 95% of large companies and 50% of midsize. 17% chose approximately half, and then another 17% chose the 63%. Well, those who chose the second one were correct. So 95% of large companies and 50% of mid-sized companies do use applicant tracking systems. So it's fairly inevitable that we're going to run into these. So all the more reason to check out that JobScan site. Again, it's free. And yeah, it can help you optimize your resume to get past these tracking systems. All right. Thanks for participating.
That's amazing, all these resources. I feel a little jealous because I had none of these resources when I was at that place. I'm feeling a little dated at this point. Good thing I've had my job for a while. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about how when you're in the job process, the job search process, it's very natural to feel discouraged or frustrated along the way. So I just want to interject for a moment to talk about how to cope with that. And so I'm a big believer that how you think about things or how you frame things is going to impact how you feel. And so how you conceptualize a situation is very, very important and helps you cope with it either well or not so well. So if you, from right off the bat, just tell yourself, this is a bit of a roller coaster ride, and there are going to be points where you're discouraged or frustrated and things may not go well. Just know that that's part of the process. And so if you go into that knowing that and coming to terms with that, when it happens, you're already prepared, and you can be like, oh, that is what Dr. Suda was talking about. Yeah, this is one of those low points where I keep getting those rejection letters or nothing's pulling through. Please don't take that as permanent. Dr. Jude will be talking about that a little bit later. So there are going to be ups and downs along the way. It's all over the place, and just keep that in mind. So when you are discouraged, we're going to move a little bit toward how to sell yourself and highlight your strengths. Of course, when you're discouraged, it's kind of hard to do that. Right? Now, I want you to take a moment. We're going to do a little reflection, okay? Take a moment to yourself. This isn't a poll or anything. I want you to think about your strengths. I want you to think about what you value about yourself and what are those attributes, skills, parts of yourself that could really benefit a potential employer. Just take a moment and think about that. Okay, so in order to be valued by others, the first step is really valuing yourself and recognizing your strengths and what you bring to the table. And it's important to really think about that before you even go to writing your resume or your cover letter, because as a potential employer, so I'm often on a lot of search committees, I'm on one right now. When I read that, how am I going to feel it? How am I going to feel your strengths if you aren't conveying them to me? Now, don't get me wrong. I do not mean be overly confident in an obnoxious way. So sometimes I get those overly confident letters and I'm like, oh, geez, you know. So there's a balance. Okay, there's a balance in stating it in such a way. Now, I also know there are cultural factors in how we sell ourselves. In many cultures, being humble is very valued. And so stating something confidently or positive about yourself is kind of seen as obnoxious, even if it's on the mild end of the spectrum. So I do think it could be helpful to get feedback from others on your resume, your cover letter, and know that being humble or being too humble or negative about yourself could then convey to the reader like, oh, heads up, this person has difficulty with feedback, you know, or this person sometimes can procrastinate. Like, so you want to be careful. We're going to talk about strengths and weaknesses a little more later on kind of how and what ones to possibly use. But the key is employers want to know that you will be a good fit with their company. That is important. And also know you're evaluating them as well. So maybe that can help you be a little more confident too. So it's a two-way street here, okay? So you want to emphasize your pertinent skills that will benefit your employer, your education, your experiences. Don't be shy about that. You've earned that. You have worked for those things and they're important. Sometimes they might not seem like they're directly relevant, but again, there are many transferable skills from other fields, other positions that you may have had. So think about, okay, even if it was a total different field, you might have had to be very organized. You might have had to coordinate things. You might have had to meet deadlines, for example. So those are then things that also make you a fit for this next job, even if it's a very different field. So here's what's very important too. Another thing that's very important is you want to do research on the employer and the position and what it's all about. Dr. Jude will be talking about this, I believe, a bit later as well. The more you know what they're looking for and the more you know about the position and about the setting, also the more confident you will be. So doing your homework and being prepared makes you more confident, okay? And then you'll also know how your strengths and personal attributes fit with their setting. So I cannot emphasize this enough, that your self-esteem, balancing being humble and overly confident with kind of an in-between in order to sell yourself is really important in the job search process.
So Dr. Suda, thank you for saying that, because I really do feel that, you know, recognizing and acknowledging what your strengths and competencies are is a real first step in order to be able to sell it. It's going to be hard for you to sell something if you don't necessarily buy it yourself. So being able to identify what your key strengths are and what you bring to the table can be really helpful. Knowing your strengths, you will likely be asked about them at your interview, or will be asked to describe some aspects of yourself that you think would lend well to this particular position. You might also be asked about weaknesses or areas that you'd like to further develop. Be careful here, because some students or some individuals actually end up sharing more negative aspects about themselves than they would like to. They end up sometimes listing more weaknesses than strengths, or they end up talking about a particular weakness that really does impact impact their performance on the job. Here's the thing, we think that you can actually mention an area that you feel like you need to improve on, but it'd be helpful if you maybe reframe that instead of a weakness into an area of growth or a growth edge, letting them know that that's something that you're working on. And if you do identify a potential weakness or growth edge, identify one that's not essential to the job, because if they're looking for a particular aspect that you can't fulfill, then you likely wouldn't be a strong candidate for that position.
So like if paperwork is a big part of the job and you talk about a weakness being completing paperwork and being organized with paperwork or procrastinating on paperwork, I feel like there's going to be a moment on the search committee. So that's one example of that. I really like, Jude, your use of the word growth edges. I'm not a big weaknesses person. I really believe that, you know, we all have areas that we're growing in, and we're evolving and learning and developing ourselves all the time. And to really look at it as that is so important.
So further along the interview, it's going to be really important for you to do some research about the organization, as Dr. Suda mentioned earlier.
So remember again, the more prepared you are, the less anxious you are likely to be, because you know your stuff. Now I want to talk about this concept for a moment of being yourself and presenting your authentic self. So you hear that all the time, right, Dr. Jude, for interviews? You hear all the time, be yourself.
Be
it's
genuine.
quite a cliche, right? It's a very cliche thing to say to someone. And then I can see kind of being like, well, what the heck is that? Be myself. Now we do say that with a disclaimer. Now we do have many parts of ourselves. So I'm not talking be yourself, I don't know, like at the Thanksgiving dinner table or something like that, or you know, when you're having a squibble with your sibling or whatever it is. You know, so you may not share your intimate self or, you know, the unfiltered self, but more your professional self and just your genuine caring, your compassion, how you might be in a team, for example, in building relationships more at that first level, showing your interest in the job and not being too robotic. Now, sometimes when you're anxious, you can really kind of, it's almost like you're reading stuff, you know, so maybe preparing in a mirror before that and really trying to just be a person in a room having a conversation with another person and try to let go of this is a search committee, they're evaluating me, because that's going to create and build some social anxiety naturally, so for anyone, you know. So really think about it as you're interviewing them as well, and you're in this interaction where you're making a connection, you're building a relationship, and could this work? You know, does this feel like a fit?
Typically, when people experience anxiety, one way to respond to that anxiety is by avoidance. So that's why we end up procrastinating. If there's something that we have to do, oh, I'd rather not do it. It's anxiety provoking. Let me just avoid it for a little while. Well, what we find is that avoidance can serve to actually reinforce the fear next time. So while procrastination or avoidance may decrease that anxiety in the moment, when you walk away, it'll decrease. But when you return to it, it might actually be more intense when you return to it, because what we find is that when you intentionally avoid things that make you anxious, that fear grows. So one way to actually deal with fear or anxiety in psychology is through a treatment called exposure, where we basically ask the individual to approach slowly and gradually those things that make you anxious in order to feel more competent and to be able to tolerate that negative, uncomfortable situation.
Mm-hmm. We call that gradual exposure or progressive exposure. So kind of step at a time to introduce yourself to the feared stimulus gives you a sense of confidence and mastery that you can do it.
So limit that procrastination. Sometimes procrastination plays a really important role in the job search process, and it really prevents people from kind of moving on and moving up. So just know that, you know, you miss all the shots that you don't take. So if you can, try to limit some of that procrastination.
And if you think about it, in terms of the job search, what do you have to lose? You know, if you do kind of go for some things that are maybe a bit out of your comfort zone, why not? Why not just check it out? So where are we, Dr. Jude? So another thing that we want to let you know about is practice, practice, practice. The more you can do mock interviews in a similar type of room, a similar type of setting, with colleagues, with friends, with peers, with family, the more comfortable you are going to be. Google commonly asked interview questions. I'm sure it's all out there, you know, like we gave you a critical one about strengths, you know, always, you know, what's your role on a team is one I think I've always asked or been asked in interviews. The other thing I wanted to emphasize related to the interview is you want to be careful about conveying negativity. People want to be around positive people. Now, I'm not talking about like Pollyanna Miss Sunshine, you know, like, you know, you don't want to be nauseating, don't get me wrong. But you want to be careful not to say too much that's negative about your previous employer. First of all, you never know who knows whom, right? And then the current or potential employer could feel, well, if they're having problems at the last place, or if they had problems, then how do we know that they're not? It's kind of like a risk, like they might red flag that. You also want to be careful not to particularly badmouth like a supervision experience or something in a way that externalizes a bit too much. Okay.
Never ever leave the interview without asking a question.
Yes.
That is
key.
That
Never.
is really,
ever.
That is one of my biggest pet peeves when I interview a student or an individual for a particular position, and at the end we ask them any questions, and they say no. It communicates that they're not interested.
Have them written down, even if they were answered. Even if they were answered in the interview, ask a little more about it.
Dr. Suda, if I could just say real quick, I know you mentioned mock interviews. It's an incredibly helpful exercise. Inside Hire a Red Hawk, the career management system that current students and alumni have, there is a mock interview feature. So if you can't sit down with somebody, you can't schedule the time. Yeah, it's awesome. virtual interview, and it's an easy way to get it done.
Oh, that's perfect.
So we're running out of time. So just in the interest of time, we're going to go through these slides a little quicker.
Okay. So one thing we want to say, be careful of your nonverbal communication. Looking in a mirror, recording yourself in a mock interview could be helpful. Your posture, you don't want to have too closed a posture. Be comfortable with what you wear. I mean, not too comfortable, but you know, your formal professional attire. But you know, you have a tag that's sticking in your neck. I mean, it's going to drive you nuts the whole time. I'm a big tag. Yeah, I don't like tags. You know, so that is very important to be comfortable. Your posture, your hands, your facial expressions, eye rolling, not ideal. Not ideal, you know, so really watch some of those nonverbals.
And we suggest that you check out a TED Talk. You'll see here at the bottom a link for a TED Talk with Amy Cuddy. Amy Cuddy is a social psychologist, and she does work on nonverbal communication. She basically talks about a particular study that she did where she asked individuals to stand in a power pose. This power pose for 2 minutes actually led individuals to feel more confident and actually led them to be more likely to be hired for a position. So check that out, see if that's something that could help you out in the moment when you are when you're having that interview. All right. So after your interview, it's customary and it's good etiquette to follow up with your employers, your potential employers, and your interview and people who interviewed you. This is a great opportunity to kind of re-emphasize the skills that you have. And to highlight some of the things that you think would be able to benefit their organization. And
maybe something that came up in the interview that you got a sense that you connected on, so they can kind of remember that moment.
Yeah, and if you for example, if you asked during your interview what qualities that they're looking for, this might be a place for you to kind of reiterate that. So we want to make sure that you maintain your confidence. So
Yes. So the key is being aware of the messages that you give yourself. How you talk to yourself is really, again, going to impact how you feel. So making negative statements, oh my God, I'm such a loser. What's wrong with me? How is that going to be helpful? Instead, encourage yourself. Oh, I'm going to get through this. This is hard. It's a rough time. I'm a rock. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to find a job. If you are not advocating for yourself and kind to yourself, how can you expect others to be? So I really think that's a key part of the process.
And along those lines, my suggestion that I have is to limit catastrophizing. Catastrophizing is a cognitive distortion that basically where individuals experience a negative experience, and they blow it out of proportion. So I'll give you a personal example. When I was in my master's program, I had written a manuscript to be submitted for a peer-reviewed journal article. So I submitted it, got feedback from the reviewers that said, oh, it doesn't even look like the author had read this properly. At that moment, I thought, I'm never going to graduate. I'm never going to graduate.
Never going to be a psychologist.
I'm never going to be a psychologist. No one's ever going to love me. I'm going to be homeless on the streets. And
okay, and let me be clear. Dr. Jude, right now, here and now, is like the best psychologist I know.
Thank you.
Okay, so those thoughts it was completely inaccurate.
Completely inaccurate, completely irrational. One thing that I noticed, and I'm a master at catastrophizing, is that I jump to conclusions. So if you are able to kind of limit some of the conclusions that you jump to, maybe then you'll be able to kind of keep in check some of that anxiety. Because again, you know, when you aren't presented with positive feedback or you've gotten a rejection letter, it's hard to feel positive. But you know, it's going to be really important for you to do that during those times, because there are times in life when you're going to be alone and you're going to need that support, and it's going to be helpful for you to be able to provide that support for yourself. So again, try to be a mentor to yourself and try to be able to support yourself during these difficult times.
De-escalate yourself instead of working yourself up is key.
Yeah. So at this point, we'll be launching into our last poll. The question is, in this job search process, how much stress have you been experiencing? None, slight, moderate, a lot, or too much? Please indicate the level of stress you've been experiencing.
Okay, we've got about 86% of the vote. 100%. Good job, guys. So let's see. 0% said none.
Okay.
0% said slight. The overwhelming majority, 57%, indicated that they're experiencing moderate stress.
Okay.
29% indicated a lot, and then 14% indicated too much. So it's an obvious. It's something to consider.
Stressful, but it's moderately to severely stressful for everyone.
Yeah.
Which makes me so happy that we're doing this, because we want you to know that you're not alone in it, and we are here for you.
Be careful the labels that you use to describe yourself. You know, so Dr. Suda mentioned earlier, oh, I'm such a loser. Well, those labels really influence how you end up thinking about yourself. And when you do think about yourself in those negative ways, it's hard to think positively. So one suggestion is to be aware of some of the attributions or the explanations that you give yourself when you're presented with either negative feedback or negative outcome. What we find is that when those negative things happen and they conform to a personalized, a permanent, or pervasive aspect, then it actually ends up making us feel more pessimistic. It's harder for us to feel optimistic when we personalize that or we make that permanent or pervasive. So again, be kind to yourself. What we find is that individuals who have self-compassion are able to kind of weather some of those difficult moments with greater ease.
Absolutely. So, okay, we close with some tips on how to cope with the stress and pressure, because clearly you're feeling it. I hope that some of the things we've talked about thus far also make you think about the ways that you talk to yourself, the ways that you're coping right now that you might want to look at shifting. So first of all, you gotta breathe. You just gotta breathe. You have to have some balance. You have to kind of stop yourself when you're getting into that really anxious, catastrophic mode, and take a moment, chill a bit, recognize your strengths, recognize all you have, recognize this isn't permanent, and that you will get through this. Find ways to rejuvenate and replenish yourself. So have some balance, do things that are fun for you. We'll get into the self-care tips in a moment. Again, I am like a broken record, but you cannot enough watch the messages you tell yourself. Encourage yourself, instill hope, and then that will really help ameliorate your anxiety.
And one way to think about this too is to think a little bit about, what if your friend was experiencing some of the difficulties you were experiencing? What would you say to them? So those are the kind of messages you'll want to give yourself to be able to offer yourself some self-compassion. A number of tips that I wanted to offer you before we part is this idea of please practice good self-care. Please is an acronym that'll help you remember these set of skills. PL stands for addressing any physical illness. It's hard to do well and to feel good if you're physically ill. So make sure you go to the doctor, attend to any treatments, take your medication, eat well and stay hydrated. We know that there's a strong mind-body connection. So we want you to be able to feed the body so that your mind can follow. Avoid drugs and alcohol. Drugs and alcohol tend to be the things that individuals go to when they're experiencing stress, but what we find is that it actually increases stress all the more.
And just to add to that, sorry to interrupt, Dr. Jude, caffeine can really induce and exacerbate stress. So you want to really be mindful of that. And before an interview, now I've had the experience of over caffeinating before an interview, so just be careful.
And before the interview, make sure you get good sleep. There's a lot of research on sleep and exercise that suggests that these are two very important things in maintaining just physical health as well as emotional and psychological health. So another set of tips are, if you do not attend to these please tips, what you'll find is that stress is going to be easier to mount, and it's going to be more difficult for you to kind of just go through your day-to-day activities without addressing all these issues. PL for just those. We'd like to open it up to any questions or comments you might have. And also, if you are a current student and are experiencing some difficulties during this process, please come to us at CAPS. You can, we're here Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 at Russ Hall. You can also meet with one of the counselors at Let's Talk. We have Let's Talk sites throughout the week, Monday through Friday.
During the school year.
During the school year, just check out our website and check out the Just In Case app, also available on our CAPS website for more information. If you are not a student or if you've graduated, one resource that you could seek is the Community Counseling Clinic, which is located at 147 Clove Road in Little Falls, and they are there to support the mental health of our community. So,
and Let's Talk, just so you all know, it's walk-in support hours. You don't need an appointment. You can just stop by. It's not therapy. It's just support. We see people on a one-on-one as needed basis. So within that 90-minute block, we'll see 5 or 6 people, and sometimes it's a bridge to get further support at CAPS. In the summer, we do have one Let's Talk site on Wednesdays in the Student Center, room 422, from 10:30 to 12. You do have to be a current student, so that's for current students. But if you'd like to contact us for referrals, if you are a graduate, we'd be happy to help you as well.
All of our services at CAPS are free and confidential, so please come and contact us if you ever have any questions or concerns about anything we've talked about.
You are not alone. We are here for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for us? Thoughts, reactions?
Hi, Dr. Suda. We did have a couple of questions during the presentation. One was, will we be able to have the PowerPoint? I can see maybe the individuals out there who remain as attendees. On the right-hand side, there's a handouts tab. I believe my colleague Chrissy Sandella has put that out there. So if you wanted a copy of the presentation, that's there. And again, I answered a few of the questions during the presentation. Appreciate you guys listening in today, and of course my colleagues, Dr. Jude and Dr. Wadhwani. Wadhwani.
Everyone gets it wrong. It's really okay.
Oh boy, but I know you so well.
Just don't do that in an interview.
No. All right, thank you.
Thank you.